It's time to take your seat in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Here's your host, Mike Vaccaro.
Hey, thank you, Chuck, and welcome once again, everybody, in the front row. I am your host, Mike Vaccaro. Behind the scenes, as always, JR Quitman, our creator, producer, and director. This is a CLNS Media Network podcast. Be sure to check out clnsmedia.com for more great shows. We also invite you to subscribe, to like, to share our show as we continue to bring you great guests, including our guest today in episode number 67 is Jeremy Roenick, one of the best American-born players to ever play in the NHL. He shares his story with us, which includes 20 years spent in the NHL and what he's doing now, a lot of side projects once he retired. Our guest, episode number 67, it is Jeremy Roenick. Well, Jeremy, again, thanks for spending some time with us here today. We appreciate your patience. I know we've tried this a couple of times. Finally get to hear your story as one of the best American-born NHL players in history, right? So for you, for that to be the case, born in America, you're born in Boston, raised there, grew up there. What are your early memories of Boston and where sports and maybe in particular hockey was in the early days for you?
Well, it started when I was 3 or 4 years old in Connecticut, actually. I was born in Boston, and my dad worked for Mobil Oil and was an area manager. So he moved around the country quite frequently. So from the time I was born in Boston until I was 13, I lived in three different towns in Connecticut, Texas, Rochester, New York, and Virginia. So six cities before I was even 13, before I went back to Boston to start my prep school career at Thayer Academy, my prep school years. So, I started playing hockey in Connecticut, and it just is one of those things where I stepped on the ice. I was actually there to keep my little buddy company who was starting hockey because his mom was afraid that he would quit if he didn't have a little friend with him. My dad was a soccer and football guy, so it was never a hockey family. And I got on the ice and I just never left. And it just, it was hard to get, for my mom to get me off the ice at times. I mean, she had to literally come onto the ice and chase me around the ice to try to get me to come off. It was literally that much of a passion for the game. And, like I said, I was very fortunate to grow up in a very hockey oriented neck of the woods in New England. And, it was one of those things. Everywhere I went, I seemed to get better, play against older kids. And, I was a super adept at scoring goals. And my dad always made sure that I was the best skater. When I always tell kids what's my biggest suggestion for kids when they're starting or when they're younger, and that's take a lot of power skating classes, learn how to skate properly, learn how to skate with, use your edges well, because I always say everybody wants to use the puck, right? But the puck doesn't matter if you can't get to it, and it doesn't matter if you can't do anything when you get when you get it. So, skating is the most important part, and I was very, very lucky to be able to be a very good skater early, which kind of led to everything else coming into fruition. But I was very fortunate. Like I said, I played in a lot of good teams, scored a lot of goals, played with some great players, and won 2 national championships as a Bantam back-to-back with the New Jersey Rockets. And then had my high school days with Tony Amonte at Thayer Academy. We had just an amazing team. We won 2 New England championships in prep school. The one championship being probably the most watched high school championship game of all time between Thayer Academy and Avon Old Farms with Brian Leach back in 1985, 86. So pretty special times as a young kid, and pretty much my career just continued as from a kid.
Yeah, you were on a big stage early on. I want to go back. I had read or seen somewhere when you were 7 years old, a chance encounter with Gordie Howe. How did that impact you and your love for the game of hockey?
Well, I've always been very, very passionate about the fans, whether they like me or whether they don't. It didn't matter either way, because I knew that they were the the key and the rock behind pro sports. Pro sports wouldn't be pro sports without the fans these people paying their hard-earned money to buy a ticket, and these days very expensive tickets, to come watch us play what we love to do and play our sport in these big arenas. If it wasn't for the fans, we'd just be a local beer league with the designated beer guy. That's it. And so I always knew that, but I realized that at a young age, like you said, at 7, I was in Hartford when Gordie Howe was playing with Mark and Marty for the Whalers. And it was a Saturday morning. We just finished my game, and the Hartford Whalers were coming on for their morning skate at our local arena where they practiced. And all us kids get to the glass, we get our stuff off, and we're all hanging over the glass in awe of watching them shoot the puck and seeing our idols on the ice. And halfway through the practice, Gordie Howe comes by, scoops up a whole bunch of snow on his stick and dumps it on my head and, winks at me and then shakes it off my head. And I thought it was the coolest thing at the time. And I still think it is. I'm 53 years old. I'm still telling the story. But I remember how much of an impact that Gordie Howe made for me and how great it made me feel. And for him, it was nothing. For him, he was just having fun. For him, he was just, doing what he does. And it was not even a thought in his mind. And I knew at that point that, as I was getting older and still remembering that situation with Gordie, I can create so many great stories, and I can make so many kids happy, and I can give souvenirs with pucks or sign autographs, or just stop and say hi and ask questions and let them ask questions of me and give them 30, 40, 50 minutes of my time, if not more, that will last a lifetime for people. And I truly believe the graciousness of fans is very, very important. And I want them to know that I respect that and appreciate that. And I've never forgot what Gordie Howe taught me at such a young age. And now at 53, there's not a day that doesn't go by where I don't get the stories from somebody that I touched along the way. So it's paying me back in dividends now after my career. That makes me feel, that I did something good by making sure I did well. What kind of bothers me is my whole career, a lot of people see me, through the media, or they see me as the media wants to portray me as, the controversial one, or the one that's egocentric and the guy who's all into himself and an asshole and blah, blah, blah. But I can guarantee you, if you met the millions of people that have met me in person or have had the opportunity to cross paths and maybe have a conversation, or maybe just a passerby in an airport, I can guarantee you that you would have 100% an agreement that I am not what the media has portrayed. So.
And is that something, I'm sure you talk to current guys and younger players as well, is that something that you relate to them, that, hey, again, be one with the fans, because it's going to be rewarding for them and obviously for you as well?
Always. I mean, I remembered walking through a bunch of fans and seeing a couple young guys just walk and not sign autographs, and I'd literally turn around and tell them, hey, get back there, sign a couple autographs. It's don't ignore them. Don't shoo them off. It'll come back and haunt you one day. You don't want to be known as that player who doesn't sign autograph or who's an asshole. And it's not that bothered me at the time that the media, kind of portrayed me as the villain, which is fine. I mean, I think it's kept me from a lot of things because the media is so dishonest and evil, to tell you the truth.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But again, you're born in 1970. So 1980, the U.S. Olympic hockey team, you've got a couple of guys from Boston University. We were lucky enough to have Mike Ruzioni on here previously. Did that have an impact on you as well for your love of the game and your passion for the game?
It was the driving point. Because when you're 10 years old, you're just playing. You really don't know what the Olympics is. You really don't know how big of a deal pro hockey is. And even though I was a big Boston Bruins fan at the time, watching Mike Ruzioni score that goal, watching the team, defy every odd imaginable, and and knowing what it was like at that time. I mean, I had a game and I was dressed in all my equipment watching that game. And as soon as that game was over, we all raced to the arena, and it seems like every car came into the parking lot at the same time. And we were about 10 minutes late for the game, but there was nobody that was there pretty much on time. And, there was 30, 40 Mike Ruzionis on the ice that after that game. And that's I think that's really what propelled USA Hockey, because it motivated guys like me and Chris Chelios and Brian Leach and Mike Modano and Billy Guerin. I mean, these guys that were my age at the time, and I think it all culminated in 1996 when we won the World Cup. I think in 2002 when we won the silver medal against Canada. I mean, being against Canada at that 2002 Olympics was like everything came to a peak. For 22 years later, after that gold medal, here in the United States is now a superpower in hockey, playing against their arch rival and the home of hockey, which is the Canada sport, and playing against Canada. So it was really cool. But there's no question if that 1980 team doesn't win that gold medal, I think USA Hockey would have taken a different path for sure.
And for you, again, as you said, playing for the U.S. as well, what does that mean for a player when you're playing for your country? You've had a great career in the NHL, obviously, but to play for your country as well, what does that mean?
Well, it's everything. I mean, I'm a very patriotic person, almost to a fault. I get extremely, extremely upset and angry when I see disrespect of our flag or disrespect of our country or disrespect of our anthem, or disrespect of our military, or people saying, that they don't like America, they don't like our country, and so on and so forth. It really bothers me a lot because I've had the opportunity of wearing the red, white, and blue and representing them on the world stage. And obviously, when you play for a city, you play for those fans. For the red, white, and blue, you're representing 335 million people who are all rooting for you. So there's obviously a lot more at stake and a lot more pressure, but a lot more pride in that. I mean, granted, you know how many people play hockey in this world, and the fact that I'm one of 20 that's on the biggest stage in the world is pretty magical for me.
Yeah, it certainly was, as you said, on that stage, a great career. But you go back, as you said, Thayer Academy, great success there, and then you're drafted out of high school to go to the NHL. That's a rarity, right? So what was that experience like for you to be drafted coming out of high school and have all that notoriety at that time?
Well, it was scary. It was scary because I'm 155 pounds in 1988 at the draft. And it was not usual dealings that the National Hockey League drafted USA high school kids. I mean, Mike Modano was the number one draft pick of that year, but he went to Prince Albert. Mm-hmm. I mean, he went and did what all the NHL teams and scouts and management would want him to do, is go play in major junior in Canada so he can get developed the right way. I stayed in high school. I think there's only maybe four guys that ever came straight from high school into the National Hockey League, maybe five. I know of Tom Barrasso. I know of Phil Housley. I know of Bobby Carpenter. But I don't really know of anybody else that have had the ability to come right out of high school. My crazy thing is I came out of my junior year of high school. I didn't even finish my senior year. I left after my junior year, and I was 158 pounds. And it was the scariest thing ever, because I'm going from high school hockey to where guys, are barely going through puberty. And now I'm walking into an NHL locker room where guys have more hair on their chest than I have in my whole body, with scars, no teeth, and receding hairlines, and look like they should be in prison. That's a big change in terms of what kind of style of hockey you're going into. And I felt very fortunate. I'll tell you a quick story about the draft. And the Blackhawks are getting ready to draft number 8, and they didn't know who to pick. And I was ranked in the middle of the first round that year. But a guy named Jack Davidson and another gentleman named Sean Cody, who were the top scouts for the Blackhawks, as they're sitting around the table, and it's their turn to pick. And Jack Davison and Sean Cody both look at Bob Pulford and the rest of the team at the Blackhawks table and said, listen, this kid is available. If you don't pick him, we quit. And Jack Davidson's been around for 10, 20 years for the Blackhawks, and he put his whole job and career on the line for me, and said, you don't draft this kid, we're going to quit. And I heard that, and I obviously my appreciation and love grew even more for them, but it also added some pressure to me, and those are things that drove me a lot of times. And I was very thankful for the Blackhawks for drafting me, but even more thankful for Jack and Sean to literally, put up their livelihood, and that's how much they believed in me. So I feel very fortunate to be able to make them proud.
So you knew about that when you got drafted as a junior out of high school? You talk about pressure.
After. Yeah. Sean Cody told me that afterwards. And Sean Cody is a Boston area guy, so he was the guy that scouted me the most.
Okay.
And so he had informed me later that, after the draft, that's what happened. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Well, this is in 1988. You make your debut in October 6, 1988. You remember that against the Rangers and what that was like for you?
Yeah, I remember I threw up in the locker room before the game, and I felt awful. I did not play well in my first 4 games, which is why Keenan came up to me after the 4th game and asked if I would be okay with going to play a couple months in juniors and get a little bit some more reps against some good players and kind of build myself up, because going from high school hockey right to Chicago was very difficult. So I ended up going to Hull, the major junior in Quebec major junior, and lighting that league up. I think I had 74, 75 points in 27 games or something crazy like that. And then tore apart the World Juniors, and then came back to the Blackhawks. They called me up in an emergency recall situation with the Hawks. They had too many guys that were injured and too many guys in the minors were injured. So they brought me up from junior, which was allowed then. And that's when I scored my first goal, and I scored the next 3 games. And then Keenan didn't want to send me back to junior. So he told the trainer, hey, Gapper, make sure that the guys that are hurt, make sure they stay hurt. This kid's going to stay here for the rest of the season, which I did. Ended up having 24 games in my first year due to a couple injuries, and I had like 18 or 19 points in 24 games in my first season, and then was up for the Rookie of the Year the next year, because I think 25 games is the rookie limit. If you play under 25 games, you're eligible to be a rookie in the following year. So, and I had a big year in my rookie year, and just seemed to continue to accumulate after that.
Well, that call up in '89, you go to the playoffs, right? You had a winning goal against St. Louis after you lost your teeth and you had 15 stitches. There's something about hockey, guys. Yeah. What made you want to come back and just keep going, and you had such a big performance, a big goal?
First of all, it's in my nature. Winning is everything. I think that year of where I was and who I played and who I was surrounded by, and my coach Alain Vigneault in Hull was very tough, very demanding, as was Keenan. But then you get a chance to play in the playoffs. My first year, right? My first my rookie season, 1989. So it's 88, 89, and playing against St. Louis, which was always wars and battles. And I remember in the second period, Steve Larmer's skate in the corner. We got kind of tussled up in a scrum, and his skate comes up and hits me, cuts me for 15 or 16 stitches in the side of the nose. And then I battle in the third period with Glenn Featherstone, who was 8 feet tall, and he went to cross-check me right in the mouth, and all my teeth fell apart in my mouth, and literally all the pieces are on my tongue. And I'm yelling at Kerry Frazier. I'm like, Kerry, that he just knocked my teeth out. He just cross-checked me in the mouth. He goes, no, he didn't. And I opened my mouth and stuck my tongue out, and all my teeth are on my tongue. And so there was no denying that I got cross-checked in the mouth. So he goes to the box for 5 minutes. I go to the box for 2 minutes for roughing. As soon as I come out of the box, there's like 8 minutes left in the game, tie game, and I get in front of the net and tip in a goal for the winning goal in that series. And we went on to win that series and go on to the conference finals against Calgary. Lost to Calgary in the conference finals. They won the cup, but it was an awesome experience. And you learn to play through adversity. You play through pain. You got to do things that are not in your nature. And I learned that at a very young age. And it was kind of, and I know I'm talking a lot, but it brings back just a lot of memories. It's your reputation gets created at certain points. What kind of person you're going to be, what kind of player you're going to be, who are people going to rely on you on, what are you going to play through? That specific incident, when I came back with my teeth gone and they said, okay, this kid's tough. This kid will play through any kind of adversity. And I showed that my whole career. So it's just natural.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I mean, doing that in your rookie season, getting the call up in the playoffs, that had to set a tone for the player you were going to be and the respect you were going to get from not only your teammates, but probably your opponents as well.
Oh, no question. That was definitely the springboard. That was the springboard that started the kind of the reputation. But I had to keep it up, right? I had to continue to be the physical player, to be which I was never physical before. Mike Keenan almost strangled me and made me become a physical player at 160 pounds now. So, I had to keep it up. It's consistency is important. And, when you're hurt and you're making $100,000 a year and, somebody's waiting to take your job, you played with sprained ankles. You played with concussions. You played with separated shoulders and broken toes. Those things didn't keep you out of games because somebody came in to take your job and did better than you. You have to fight to get it back, which is not an easy thing to do. So once I got it, I did everything I can not to relinquish it.
Yeah, I think 80s, 90s pro athletes, certainly a different brand than what it is today. And so 89, 90, you get called up full time with the Blackhawks. Did you think that you were going to have a 20-year career from that point on?
You don't think about it. I mean, when you're playing and you're having fun. You're concentrating on winning every single night. And I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how fast it goes. Mm-hmm. I remember in 1992, we went to the Stanley Cup Finals against Pittsburgh. And Steve Larmer said to me, hey, kid, we got to win this series. We got to win this championship because we might not get a chance to do this again. And I kind of laughed at him. I'm like, I'm 22 years old. I went to the semifinals 2 times. Now I'm in the Stanley Cup final. I'm going to have loads of opportunities for this one. And nope, it was my only one I ever went to. And I say that to a lot of young kids, take advantage of the situation and the opportunity that's ahead of them because you might not have it again. But it is amazing how fast the years just shred by because we're so lucky to play a game for a living. And even though it's very, very difficult, it's very painful, very stress related. When you're with the guys, when you're traveling with the boys and you're going out and having great dinners and, battling together, winning or losing, the time literally goes by really fast. And 20 years went, like a blink of an eye with me, but I never thought it would be 20 years. And I'm surprised that how durable that my body was and how much I could withstand. And, I would think that I'd be in a wheelchair right now at 53, but I still, feel great and, don't have too many wounds to lick right now, but I just hope it stays that way.
Was it a different, more physical game back when you played than what we're seeing now?
There is no physicality now. I mean, barely. I mean, you barely see anybody hit anybody hard these days. The fighting is gone. The tough mentality is gone. You see very few people with the ability to play through injuries. They're more likely to take 5 days off for an injury that could probably just keep them one day. You have your few exceptions like Matthew Tkachuk, obviously, like Patrice Bergeron, these, some of the old school mentality type guys, Marchands, these guys play with a lot of pain. McKinnon. I mean, these are the old school type mentality guys that I really enjoy playing. But it's night and day difference between hockey in the late 80s, early 90s to today's game, without question.
20 years again, the NHL, 8-time All-Star, right? What do you remember your first time?
Nine-time
All-Star. Do you remember the first time you were named an All-Star and what that moment was like to be around the rest of those players?
Of course. Well, my first All-Star game was 1991 in New York. I was in New York and heard the news that I had made the All-Star team. And the reason why it was so special, because it was in Chicago Stadium. And at the time that we were going through the Iraq War, was maybe it was Iraq. It was one of the wars that were happening overseas, and the Gulf War or something like that. And I remember they were talking about canceling the game, and I was all nervous and freaked out that this might happen, because I mean, what an unbelievable experience to have your first All-Star game in front of your own fans. And I'll never forget, they had the game. I sat in my normal stall, and I used to sit next to Doug Wilson. And I remember, so they took all the equipment out that was in the locker room, and they put Wayne Gretzky right next to me in my first All-Star game locker room. And it was really crazy because Wayne Gretzky in 1984 asked me to go play for his team in Hull. He came to Boston and took me to breakfast and took me to the game and tried to convince me to go play for the Hull Olympics in 1984. And 7 years later, here I am sitting next to him in my first All-Star game. And we talked about it. And it's just, he said, I knew you were a good kid. I never saw you play, but Charlie Henry said you were something special, and now you're here. It was pretty special moment for me. And then during the game, the patriotism that the Chicago Stadium showed, it was the loudest I've ever heard that stadium for a national anthem. And every single person in that building either had a sign or a flag, showing their patriotism for America that was happening in that war. And yeah, it was the Gulf War. And the crazy thing about that game is I had a goal and 3 assists, and they had voted me the MVP of the tournament with like 5 minutes left in the game. The problem was, in the last 3 minutes of the game, Vinny Damphus scored 3 straight goals in the last 3 minutes, and they had to go back up and re-vote for the MVP. I think Vinny had 4 or 5 goals because of that. So I lost the MVP that year because Vinny Damphus just lit it up in the last 3 minutes of that All-Star game.
Well, still memorable All-Star game, to say the least. 1988 to 96, your career with Chicago, you were routinely the leading scorer for that team. What do you remember most about that before you got traded eventually in 96 to the Phoenix Coyotes?
Just the guys that I played with. I mean, Chris Chelios, without doubt, is one of the greatest athletes, leaders, passion, love for a game that I've ever seen. I learned more from Chris Chelios than any player that I've ever been around, ever seen, ever associated with. Playing with him was unbelievable. I got to play with Bob Probert, who is an icon in the game, and knowing what his reputation was over his Detroit years, to seeing what he was like as a teammate was absolutely amazing. He was one of the greatest, nicest, one of the most humble people I've ever shared a locker room with, Bob Probert. And my ability to play with Tony Amonte, the guy who I played with in high school, we just tore up the high school league, and then we tore up the National Hockey League together. I call Tony Amonte my soulmate of wingers. Tony and I could play blindfolded together, and those are what really those memories that I remember most about Chicago.
What about the Bulls during that time and Michael Jordan's run? I mean, you were there during that same time as well. Did did you guys feed off of each other and in the successes that they were having? You kind of, enjoyed some of that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Chris Chelios and I would watch. We would go down into our locker room for Bulls games and walk up the stairs and stand in the little cove where you go out to the court. It's right behind the net, the rim, and we would watch pretty much every game. And then we would hang out with Rodman and Dennis and Ronnie Harper, and I played golf with Jordan many times, and it was an amazing time to be in Chicago watching the Bulls shred record after record, and Michael Jordan shred record after record. Again, you learn a lot from watching one of the greats, and Jelly and I had the ability to watch Michael Jordan perform night in, night out. For sure, we took advantage of that.
So in your mind, he wasn't a horrible player, as someone has said recently about him?
You mean the jealous Scottie Pippen?
Yes.
I think everybody should remember. You should remember when Michael Jordan wasn't there, and Phil Jackson carved out the last play of the game, and the play was to go to Tony Kukoc to make the last shot. And Scottie Pippen was so mad that he didn't even come out into the court to play the last play. Now, if that doesn't tell you the type of person that Scottie Pippen is and who Scottie Pippen was concerned about, then nothing will. So Scottie has absolutely no bearing and no right to say anything about one of the greatest athletes of all time, and not just basketball players. I mean athletes. Scottie Pippen is jealous, and Scottie Pippen just wants to be in the news again. He wants to have some attention. But I'll tell you one thing: the one place he should not go is to criticize Michael Jordan in any way, shape, or form.
Well, we're based in Wilmington, North Carolina, where Jordan is from, so we're probably a little biased ourselves for Jordan. Back to hockey here, and for you again, great run with Chicago, but eventually again you get traded to Phoenix. What was that like for you to get traded and kind of see the business side of professional sports from that standpoint?
Well, I hated it. I hated being traded. It was the first time ever where I was expendable. I've never been expendable anywhere. I was always the first pick in everything. Now this is the first time that I was I was kind of thrown away from a team or expendable. And that's hard. That's hard to deal with mentally. Granted, I was going to a phenomenal city. I was going to a great place where I raised my kids. I went to a place that we taught hockey, and we built a lot of hockey fans and became very close to the community. And I ended up living in Scottsdale for 25 years. So, but it would be the one thing that I would change if I went back in my career, and how I dealt with my whole contract dispute in 1996 with the Blackhawks and the Wirtz family. Because I think without that, I would have been a Hawk for my entire career, and things probably would have turned out a lot different for me.
Well, for you though, 5th and 6th All-Star appearances while you're in Phoenix as well. Was that kind of motivation to show that you still had it? As you said, you were kind of cast off, but did it motivate it at all?
No, I was motivated regardless of being traded or not. That was just my personality. So, I wanted to play well for the team that I was on, no matter what happened. And I didn't say, oh, well, you guys are gonna pay for trading me, so on and so forth, even though, it did hurt them for quite some time after. I was just going to play. And then I got to play with Keith Tkachuk. I mean, there's not enough adjectives to describe the type of person and type of player and leader that Keith Tkachuk is. Outside of Chris Chelios, he and Dirk Graham, I've never seen leadership like these three have portrayed. So, Keith's the second highest scoring American of all time, and I got to watch him play and how he did it. And it's no surprise to me watching Matthew and Brady play in the National Hockey League right now why they are so successful. It's because their dad and their mom, they brought them up the right way. to act the right way, to perform the right way, have respect and accountability. So I got to play with some great players in Phoenix too.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned a lot of big names already. Is he kind of is he the one that you looked up to the most, or maybe you learned from the most?
No, Chelly was the guy. I was the most. What Keith showed everybody and what he portrayed is the accountability, taking care of people, doing what you have to do, showing up to play when it's supposed to be played, doing your job. He was the best at taking care of the trainers, whether we were at home or whether we were on the road. Keith Tkachuk made sure that the trainers were tipped well, that they bought him dinner, and he made sure that all the other guys did it as well, the young guys. And there was nobody that respected the training staff or respected the people that behind the scenes more than Keith Tkachuk. And then he'd go out and fight for his teammates and fight for, and I remember when I got my jaw broken by Darian Hatcher in 1989 or 1999, the next game that we played them the following season, right off the face-off, Keith Tkachuk goes right at Darian Hatcher, and they just go toe-to-toe. And that's 5 months after my jaw was broken, so that shows you what kind of person Keith Tkachuk is. He's going to stick up for his teammates. He's going to be the leader, and you better follow him, because if you don't follow him, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, certainly had your back there. So a great run with Phoenix, then a free agent contract with the Flyers 2001 to 2005 in Philadelphia. What made Philadelphia the right place for you at that time?
Well, I was in Detroit. Talking with the Red Wings. I was talking to 3 teams at the time. I was talking to the Red Wings, the Bruins, and the Flyers. And I was literally in Detroit, and I just finished having dinner with their GM and talking. And I was talking with my wife about Detroit, and my wife rides horses, and she's like, there's really not many horse facilities around here. It really doesn't suit me very well here in Detroit. And as we're talking, Bobby Clark calls me on the phone. It's like 12 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night, and says, asked if I had made my decision. And I said, I have not. He goes, well, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but we're looking to sign this other player. And we need to know as soon as we can, because if you're not going to come, we want to sign this guy as soon as we can do it. And I was like, put on the spot. So I called my buddy Rick Tocchet. And there's nobody that I trust more with his opinions about the game or about, different teams. Toc was one of the best Flyers of all time and was actually a Philadelphia Flyer at that time. And Toc said, you got to come to the Flyers. We have a great team. They're building a great team. It's a great place to live. It's good for Tracy with the horses, a lot of horse properties. And so I decided to go to Philly, and I made up my decision within 10 minutes of Bobby Clark's, and I felt bad for Detroit and, for the generosity they gave me. But also the Boston Bruins offered me probably, I think, the biggest contract that the Boston Bruins, in the history of the Boston Bruins organization, back in 2001. I mean, they were offering me $5 million more than Philadelphia was offering me. But the reason I didn't pick Boston was because they had just traded Billy Guerin. And I'm sitting here thinking, I want to win a cup, and I want to go to my team that I have the best opportunity to win a cup. And then you trade Billy Guerin, who was probably one of the key pieces of a team to win a cup. And that was my decision not to go to Boston, is because they literally traded Billy Guerin right before I was getting ready to sign. So I ended up going to Philly. And the crazy thing is I was going to Detroit. Detroit signs Dominic Hasek instead of me, and they win the Stanley Cup that very same year. I'm like, you're welcome.
Yeah. So looking back now, yeah, maybe some regrets, but a great run with Philadelphia, All-Star twice more there, played in your 1,000th game, 1,000 point as well. Do you look fondly at your time with the Flyers as well? And what was it like with we're talking about fans, the fan base in Philadelphia? What was that like for you during your time there?
I don't think any athlete has bonded with the fan base faster than I bonded with the Philadelphia Flyer fan base. My passion for the Philadelphia Flyers fan base is beyond anything that I can describe in words. They brought me in, and I think they saw the passion that I had for the game, the way I played the game. And I say I played the game the way that Philadelphia fans root for the game, right? That kind of passion, that kind of expectation, that kind of grit and tenacity. The passion that they show, I showed in the game, and I think they appreciated that. There's not a place where I go. There's not a place that I go where I don't see a Philadelphia fan and I don't hug them and they don't say nice things to me. I'll tell you, my popularity in Philly might be just as good as it is in Chicago. And I was in Chicago 5 years longer than I was in Philly. And that says a lot because my relationship with the Chicago fans is amazing. I'm just glad they're in separate conferences, right? So there's no animosity between the two. So I'm very fortunate to be associated with so many great cities that have the best fans I've ever seen. San Jose, unbelievable fans. I mean, unbelievable fans. LA Kings, probably the most underrated fan base in the National Hockey League, without question. Sold out building every night, people that are passionate about the game. I've been very fortunate. There's no question about that.
Yeah, you played for, as you said, great fans in great cities, great franchises as well. You had a second stint with Phoenix as well, and you played for Wayne Gretzky. What was that like? Again, you talked about him wanting to have you on hold, wanting to, the advice he gave you and with him in the All-Star game, and now he's your coach. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it sucked. It absolutely sucked. Not because of Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky is one of the greatest athletes ever, and I love Wayne. I was actually ready to play that year. I wasn't ready to play my year with the Kings. I was very mad at during the lockout. I didn't prepare. I didn't have a good season with the Kings. A couple other things, behind the scenes that I could not control, led to a bad season. But my off season, I got in shape. I got in probably one of the best shapes that I've ever been in going into a season into Phoenix. And I remember I was talking to Daryl Sutter in August of that year, and I was going to go play in Calgary. I'm literally on the phone with Daryl Sutter, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to come play for you. And then my phone beeps, and I look, and it's Wayne. And I said, Daryl, Gretz is calling me. And he goes, call me back. And, Gretz asked me to come play for him, and I couldn't say no this time. I said no to him in 94. I can't say no to Gretz again. But I really think that Phoenix brought me back to try to maybe sell more tickets rather than to get me to come play. I played on the third, fourth line most of the season, if I even had a line. Sometimes I was a healthy scratch. They didn't give me the opportunity to play like I think I should have, and it turned out to be a bad year. I scored a hat trick in the last game of the season, and I said to Gretz, see, this is what you've been missing all year. You didn't give me a chance. Gretz gets a bad rap for his coaching career because everybody expects Wayne Gretzky to coach the way he played, and it's totally impossible. First of all, he was given a very average team that he can only do so much, and you can't expect Wayne Gretzky to be in the locker room as much as a coach is needed and put the time into being a coach, because Wayne Gretzky is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was not a good situation, but he did everything that he possibly could to help that organization and help that team. He was just dealt a shitty hand.
You said just a 1 year there, 2006-07, and then to San Jose after that. And again, 500th goal. Take us through that. November 10th, 2007. I saw you describe it as an ugly goal. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was the worst goal ever. It was one of my worst in my career. With no question about it, one of the worst goals of my career. and it was against Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
It was against Gretz. So there was a lot of joy in doing it against my old team. And I remember the morning of that game, a reporter asked me, if there's an empty net and you're coming down in an empty net, will you put it in the empty net for your 500th goal? And my answer was no, I won't. I don't want to see my 500th goal be an empty net goal. I'd either hold on to it or give it to somebody else to score. So that night, I'm playing in the second period, and I'm literally coming across the red line, and I'm dumping the puck in, and I fire it off the glass, and it hits the partition in the glass and redirects right towards the net. And the goalie comes out and gets caught behind the net, and he comes out to try to stop it. Actually stopped it, and then had a little jerk reaction, and he hit the puck into the net. I was just the last one to touch it from San Jose. It was the ugliest goal. So I think I got punished. By saying I wouldn't put it in the empty net because I don't want an ugly goal. And I ended up having the ugliest goal of my career. And it's so funny because the team actually took that pane of glass out and had all the guys signed it and gave it to me as a gift for my 500th goal. But I remember the very next day, we're playing in Phoenix. We had a back-to-back with Phoenix. I came down the left-hand side in the first period, and I just fired a snapshot, far side, right underneath the bar in the top corner. It was one of the best shots that I've ever had in my career. So I kind of, in my mind, kind of switched those up in my head. But it was fun.
There you go. Yeah, 501, a little bit prettier than 500, but you still get to 500. Yeah, that's a great story there. So the third American-born player to reach 500 as well. What does that mean to you? Because again, as you said, it's Canada's game, but to be an American-born player and to have that distinction's got to be nice.
Well, it meant the world to me, because here I've gone 18 years without a cup, without a major award. I was up in the top 10 scoring a lot, but never won a major award. I was up for Rookie of the Year. So this was like the pinnacle. Like this was getting 500 goals was, it was it would seem unachievable for most Americans. I mean, to be one of 4 Americans to score 500 goals, I still have that, that prestige. I have it. I mean, you can't take it away. And I realize it's more important now because I was in jeopardy of not even getting there, because in 2007, August, there was nobody calling. I was 4 goals shy of 500. And at that point, my career was over. If it wasn't for Doug Wilson calling me up in late August to ask me to play for San Jose, I wouldn't have gotten 500, and I don't think I'd be here talking to you today. There's no question in my mind.
Yeah, if you didn't get to 500, would you have thought that your career was incomplete?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think in my whole in the way that I am built, the way I tick, my mentality. If my career ended in August of 2007, everything that was before would have been meaningless. And in that sense, my life would have been meaningless. And I think I would have gone down a major destructive path if it wasn't for Doug Wilson and the San Jose Sharks at that time.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, they kind of saved your career, maybe saved your life at that point as well. Is that the way you look at it?
1,000,000%. Like you couldn't say it any more clear. You couldn't say it any more precise. 100% right.
So finally, it comes to an end. August 6, 2009, you decide to retire. Take us through that moment, because again, 20 years. Was it hard to walk away?
This goes back to my relationship with Doug Wilson again, because everybody talks about retirement and how difficult it is, and I just finished my 21st year, however you want to do the math, and I had another good season, and I felt like I can play one more. And my wife wanted me to play another one. My kids were at the age. My kids wanted me to play another year. My teammates wanted me to play another year. And I'm like, okay, I could probably squeak out another summer of working out. I could probably, I could get through another year playing, even though, I was tired. My body was beat up. And I remember going into Doug Wilson's office after that season was over, to have our exit meetings, and I'm sitting across the desk from Doug, and we're looking eye to eye. And I said, I don't know, Doug. I think I want to play one more year. And Doug looked at me and goes, Jeremy, sometimes people need to be your reasoning. Sometimes people need to be the person that says it's over. And he goes, I think you've done everything that you possibly can in the game. You could be one concussion from eating out of a straw the rest of your life. You don't know. You don't have anything else to prove. Doug Wilson literally said, I think you should leave on a good note. And I remember when he said that, right when he said that, that was clarity for me. And I remember that next breath. I'll never forget it. I'm sitting in that chair, and it was like the entire weight of the world lifted right off my shoulders. Literally, I didn't have a care in the world. And I remember it was the most free that I ever felt in my life. And I knew by how I felt at that moment that it was time to go. And I will tell you, since that moment, I have not missed this game 1 second. I don't wish I played it again. I actually don't even enjoy playing it anymore. I love the game. I love watching it. But there's something about putting on the skates and putting on the gear that just makes my skin crawl. And it has a lot. Again, Doug Wilson was that guy that made it okay, made it right.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of good to have when you can walk away and have no regrets from that standpoint. And again, you look at your career: 513 goals, 703 assists, 9-time All-Star. All right, again, you're not in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, I like the fact that I have like 1,600 penalty minutes too. You can't.
There you go, 1,600 penalty
minutes. You can't ignore that. Yeah, you can't ignore that
one out.
Mm-hmm.
Will you ever be in the Hall of Fame, you think? Do you need to be in the Hall of Fame?
At one point I really wanted it. Now I don't even think about it anymore. I think for them to pass over me for 10 years is it's pretty crazy, to tell you the truth. And whatever their reasoning is. And again, I think it's the media that has created a reputation of mine, whether I'm a big mouth or because I say what I feel and I'm honest, and sometimes it's controversial. I see the guys that they're inducting, and I just gotta shake my head and be like, all right, whatever. At one point I really, really wanted to be in the Hall of Fame, and I'd be lying to you to say if I didn't want to, but I don't think about it anymore. It's become a political thing for me now, I think. And I see other guys that should be there in front of me. I mean, Alexander McGillney should be there. I think Theo Fleury should be there. I think Curtis Joseph should be there. Maybe Pierre Turgeon should be there. I just don't know the qualifications. I don't know the expectations. I don't know. I mean, I think my career speaks for itself. Third in the history of Americans in goals. Third in American history and fourth in American history in points. you know, Olympic teams, world junior teams. Listen, I don't have to go through my repertoire, but where I really feel bad? I feel bad that my dad didn't get to see it.
Mm.
My dad passed in 2021, and there wasn't a bigger fan of mine than my dad. Nobody sacrificed more than my dad to allow me to get there. My mom's still alive, but my dad won't get to see it if it ever happens, and that bums me out. That's what really kind of gets me a little bit more irritated, because my dad deserved to see that happen. So, and it might happen someday. I'm not holding my breath anymore. They're going to do what they're going to do. It would be an unbelievable honor, but yeah, I think it's watered down a little bit now.
Well, if it happens, I'm sure your dad will be part of that speech, and certainly will be there for you as well, in spirit. Whether that happens or not, again, your career, you look back on it, outstanding career, and then you moved on from that, got into broadcasting, other things as well. What was that transition like for you, going from the ice to okay, what is next now?
Well, it actually wasn't that easy. It was easy to be on camera. It was easy to have the personality, but it wasn't easy to learn, the ins and outs of television. It wasn't easy to be able to have people talking in your ear while you're trying to get your opinions out, and having 2 minutes of opinions and try to slam them into 20 or 30 seconds of a spot. So, and when you don't have the vocabulary to fill, some of the wording that you wanted to have in a certain rant. But I love being on television. I love being able to go into somebody's living room on their television, teach the game, tell them my opinion of the game, entertain them, embarrass myself with some of the things that I did, to make people laugh, to make people have a conversation, to make people have debates, arguments, or agreements was great for me. I really enjoyed that. So I love the television aspect. I don't know if I would ever do it again, but I think I brought a lot of perspective. I think I brought a lot of entertainment. I think I brought a lot of creativity and a lot of realism to the television. I think people are missing right now.
Not only broadcasting, but you did some acting as well, right? A couple parts here and there, and I know you and Vince Vaughn kind of have a connection as well.
Yeah, 94 Sega, man. It's them. It's not so much me. It's Roenick. I'm the best. I am the best NHL PlayStation gamer of all time, and was end up being in Swingers with Vince Vaughn, and all that crazy stuff. And even though there was a glitch in the 94 Sega game, it's still, you can't take away that honor of being the best Sega Genesis gamer of all time. And I hear that more than anything. I get that. We used to play Chicago, and I got through college, betting with Chicago, or it was a rule in our dorm, you couldn't be Chicago because of Jeremy Roenick, and it was all really cool. It's a good part of my career and a good part of my history, and I'm proud that I was that I am represented really well in a video game. But I did acting with I did Arliss. I was the most appeared athlete on Arliss on HBO. I did Ghost Whisperer with what else? I've done all sorts of different things. I did Bones with Boreans, and did a lot of different things. Timothy Hutton, I was on with Timothy Hutton. I did a lot of acting. Actually, my first acting job was on Days of Our Lives back in the early '90s, and so I've been on a soap opera too. So I enjoy that part.
A wide range of acting for you. You're an author, and you've got a whiskey out now, right? Whiskey in the Wild, not your grandpa's whiskey. What can you tell us about the whiskey?
Yeah, it's not your average grandpa's whiskey. So during the pandemic, my friends and I decided we wanted to start something interesting, something new, and obviously you see all these different spirits coming out, people with vodkas, people with tequilas. And I thought it'd be a cool idea to do something that was different and something that everybody can enjoy in an alcohol and in a whiskey. Whiskey was the popular thing. My wife doesn't like whiskey, so I wanted to create something that she would drink with me, that I can have a cigar and we can sit in front of a campfire or in front of a fire and enjoy a nice glass of whiskey before bed or after dinner. So my partner, who was a big taste and flavor guy, he created a chocolate whiskey and a chocolate orange whiskey that, without question, is one of the most satisfying and unbelievable gratifying flavors of a chocolate and chocolate orange whiskey that you'll ever have. No burn, a great taste, a perfect taste of chocolate with a good taste of whiskey. And let me tell you something. If you haven't tried it yet, I can guarantee you that you will become addicted to whiskey in the wild after your first sip. I've been all over the country with tastings. I've had tens of thousands of people try it, and I literally I can count on one hand how many people say that they didn't prefer it. One hand. So I'm very, very proud of it.
Incredible packaging too, right? With a bottle and a flask.
Yeah, so we did something very cool. We created a bottle which took us 2 years to create. Thanks for showing that on the page there. And we wanted to do something where we wanted people to take it with them. We want them to, take it on a camping trip and be able to, put it into a flask and take a hike, go to the top of the mountain and celebrate your accomplishments with a shot from the flask, where you don't have to carry the bottle around with you. We think the packaging is phenomenal. It makes for a fantastic gift for Father's Day, for Christmas, for Mother's Day, even for groomsmen at weddings, for homecomings. You're going for a party, instead of bringing a bottle of wine, you can bring a bottle of whiskey in the wild, and you get a nice flask on top of it. So when that bottle is gone, that flask can be used over and over and over again. But it's the flavor inside. So we always say the bottle will catch your eye, but the flavor will capture your heart. And there's no question about it. I will put my whiskey up against any blend of whiskey, and I bet you I win 95% of the time.
Whiskey in the Wild. You got to check it out. Why is it not Styles? Was that your nickname, Styles? How'd you get that nickname?
Keith Kachuk, because I showed up at one of my first games with
We lost you there for a second again. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I showed up at my first game with a lavender suit on, and he just laughed at me. And then I came the next, I think, with some sort of green, not green, but whatever the lighter color of green would be called. And he's like, Jesus, we should call you Styles. And I'm like, hey, and it just hit and stuck. So Styles was the name that Keith Kachuk gave me back in 1997.
So your style off the ice, not on the ice. Let's get back on the ice here for a second. I've got to ask you, the Stanley Cup about to start. The 8th seed Florida going up against Las Vegas. Do you have a take? Have you watched the playoffs so far? Who do you think will raise Lord Stanley's Cup?
Well, I think going into it, I would have to think that Vegas is going to be the favorite. Their defense is so good. They've shown their offense is very, very strong through 4 lines. Their top guys are all producing, and even their third and fourth lines are creating offense. They're big, they're fast. I mean, the way that they got rid of Edmonton Oilers, who probably were the favorite in the West, and then the way that they beat the Dallas Stars, not only in the series, but I think in Game 6, the Golden Knights played one of the most perfect games I've ever seen played in playoff history. Their tenacity, their their puck control, their passing, their support, their decision making, the way that they worked. I mean, Dallas looked like a peewee hockey team in that game. It was 6-0. Dallas had 12 shots with 4 minutes left to go in the game. It was the most overbalanced game that I can remember ever seeing and watching. And it was all because of how well the Knights played. It had nothing to do with Dallas. The Knights just absolutely just tore them apart. So I'd have to think the Knights are going to have if they play like that, they're going to win for sure. But when you have a Matthew Tkachuk and the way that Bobrovsky is playing, the Knights are going to see a dynamic with Florida that they have not seen yet. And that's a Matthew Tkachuk dynamic, because right behind them is Sam Bennett. Right behind him is Barkov. Right behind him is, Verhaeghe. If Bobrovsky Bobrovsky's probably the MVP of the playoffs right now, but he has to play even better now in order to win this series. And I think if he does, it's going to be a barn burner.
With Matthew Tkachuk there with Florida, is that your sentimental favorite? Is that who you're kind of pulling for in a sense?
Well, the Vegas Golden Knights are my favorite team in the National Hockey League, without saying Chicago or Philly. But I got to root for Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, I was there when he was born. I grew up watching him shoot tape balls in the locker rooms. I've watched him get his diaper changed in the locker room, him and Brady. So I have a very, very huge spot in my heart for the Tkachuk family. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't pray that Matthew Tkachuk won a cup.
Well, there you go. There you go. You on social media? How can people follow you? We saw the whiskey. How else can people maybe follow you and see what you're doing these days?
Yeah, so Twitter, it's Jeremy_Roenick. On Instagram, it's just Jeremy Roenick, and whiskeyinthewild.co is our Instagram on Whiskey in the Wild. So pretty much basic. Just go on, look up my name, and my stuff is going to pop up right away. And the check mark really tells you it's me, because there are a couple imposters out there that think they can be me, but they can't.
You are the one and only JR, other than JR Equipment, our producer and show creator behind the scenes here.
Another great guy, another great JR.
There you go. There you go. A show full of JRs. I'm just Mike. JR, Jeremy, we appreciate your time and great stories, and wish you the best of luck in with the whiskey. And hopefully we see you in the hall at some point. It'd be great to hear your speech. And again, I'm sure you'll recognize and remember your dad during that speech as well.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate the sentiments and everything, and the accolades. The compliments are very, very much appreciated. Had a lot of fun, Mike. Thank you.
Well, another great story here in the front row. Our thanks to Jeremy Roenick for spending a little time with us here today. And once again, we invite you to subscribe, to like, and to share our episodes. We'll have more great guests coming your way soon. It's In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. Have a great day, everybody.